If you've got an A7RV or a similar camera and you want to understand picture profiles and which is the best one for your camera, then today we're going to run some tests and see which is the best one for you. So let's dive in. So primarily we're going to be looking at S-Log3, S-Cinetone and a hybrid version. Now the reason I'm choosing those is because S-Log3 is one of the most popular. It gives us a very flat image and a much greater dynamic range, and also is very desaturated image. So it gathers all the information. It doesn't do any in-camera processing, so it leaves a lot more room for us to be able to maneuver the image around in post-production. With S-Cinetone, it's very popular, it's new, and it's renowned for giving superb skin tones straight out of camera, while still having a lot of scope for being able to edit in post-production. And then we're going to try a hybrid version. So we're going to take the camera out on location, run it through some different scenarios and bring it back into the studio, edit the footage, and we can see the comparisons and which one will work best for you. So we're outside in St Albans in this vibrant market town, and we're going to try the different picture profiles now just to see how they look in actual real life world situations. I'm particularly interested in how some of these colours pop and what we can do with them in post-production and how skin tones are affected. So let's just run through a few examples now on this A7R5. Our first test, we're in picture profile PP8, which is S-Log3. I've left everything as standard, so it's S-Gamut 3 in Cine mode. So let's just see how that looks, and what I'm interested in is flat level of the image and how it handles the highlights and lowlights, so the shadows and the exposure in the highlights. So I'll take my hat off now because I would expect this garment to be quite dark in comparison to I'm probably getting some burnout on my head here. And I've set the exposure so that it's about plus 1.7 to plus 2, somewhere around there. The light is fluctuating slightly. I was hoping for a day that had much harsher sunlight, so we could see more in the sun, in the shadows, in the highlights. But we've got quite a flat sky at the moment, which is actually lovely for filming in. But on this time, we'll just see how this test goes. Okay, for our next test, we're in picture profile 11, and this is the S-Cinetone, and we put the gammuted S-Cinetone as well. So with that picture profile, so I've put the exposure this time at 0, so it's exposed as the camera is telling me. It's looking to me slightly overexposed, so it depends whether one should go by your eye or by the zebra, so that'll be quite interesting to see in post-production. And again, the bright burnout on the top of the head, let's see how that looks in post-production. But I'm also interested in these skin tones. The reputation for S-Cinetone is beautiful straight out of camera, so let's just see how that looks. And for my third test, I've got it in the gamma is S-Log3 and the colour mode is in Cinetone, just to see if we can blend those two together to get the nice natural colours out of S-Cinetone, but the flatter log from the S-Log3 to pull the highlights and lowlights around. At the moment, I've left the exposure as neutral again, so let's just see in post-production how that works. And again, the bald head test. Now we've got all our footage into Final Cut Pro, let's dive into the software and just look at the adjustments we've made. So as you can see here with this first clip, it's the S-Log3 clip, and I'm using Cinema Grade. Now you don't have to use that plugin, you can use the Final Cut color grading, but this works really nicely. So let's just show you how this works. You take your LUT, you drop it onto your file in the timeline, and then in the inspector we just click on Open Cinema Grade, and as you can see I've got my scopes here, and the pop out on the right hand side is I can make fine adjustments. And as you can see, I've just tweaked this a little bit where I've brought up the highlights, dropped the shadows a little bit, given a little bit of contrast. So I've just given the basic adjustment. I've brought up the saturation a little bit, and then wanted to see how that looks without a LUT. So that's looking quite nice. You can see we haven't got the burnout on the top of the head. It's a nice contrasty image, and already that's looking quite nice. To this next file, here I've actually added a LUT. So you do the same thing, you make those adjustments and then you drop a LUT on. The way that works, if I again open Cinema Grade, you get the pop-up window. As you can see there, I've made some fine adjustments, and then we go into final grading, and you can open up the LUTs here, and then you can choose from an array of LUTs, and you can import your own and you apply it. Okay, so I've already applied the LUT, so I'm just going to come out of that screen. And so as you can see, that already is looking really nice. There's a ton of LUTs, it's personal taste, or it depends on the scene that you're creating, of the type of LUT you want to use, but that looks really nice. Moving along, just looking at the S-Cinetone, I've made fine adjustments here, and actually I can just switch off the Cinema Grade, and you can just see it was slightly flatter. I've just given it a little bit of contrast and a little bit of saturation. Some very fine adjustments there. And again, you can pull that around to your taste, but I think already the colours, the exposure, everything worked really well there without any LUTs, and it did seem to preserve the highlights a little better. And here we're just looking at the S-Log3 with the S-Cinetone, and this is our hybrid, and I think actually that came out really well. There's no LUT on that at all, so you could do that adjustment and add a LUT, and I think you'd get a really nice finish there. But I really like the skin tones we've got there. I've just made these small adjustments. There was a lot of room to be able to pull that around a lot more. Next thing, I'm just going to fly through all the other picture profiles very quickly so you can just see what those little effects are, so you've got a point of comparison. Well, I hope you found that useful. If you've got any knowledge to share, put it in the comments. And if you subscribe to the channel, let us know so we can personally thank you. And I'll see you in the next one.